I would like to send the aircraft carriers. I said, I don't need them after the war is ended and won.
Objects traveling at great speeds over the South China Sea were detected by open-source satellite trackers on March 14th. Absolutely not a destroyer or carrier. A light assault vessel, the USS Tripoli LHA-7, the vessel that the majority of defense experts had dismissed as an unsuccessful trial run. Carrying as many as 20 stealth warplanes, the F-35B Lightning II on her flight deck. Along her hull, 2,550 Marines. Here we are at Hormuz. This is the reason why it is peculiar. Nearly 90% of Iran's military equation was broken by us. The Gulf floor is occupied by 60 battleships. Debris has covered the missile factories that supplied Hormuz with its teeth. Lines of drones completely silent. From their respective oceans, 2 carrier strike groups maintain perimeter control. While Lincoln rules over the Arabian Sea, Ford controls the Red Sea. Days distant, a third carrier, the Bush, is still making her way across the Atlantic. The siege may appear to be over from the outside, but Hormuz is actually still closed. Take a look at the calculations to see what complete means. There are almost 150 tankers waiting outside the strait, wasting gasoline. The market price of Brent crude remains stable at $100 per barrel. Plus, there is no surety at the moment. A 6 nautical mile maritime path can be blocked by the remaining 10% of Iran's capabilities, which consists of mines scattered over the seabed, mobile launchers buried inside mountain caves, and swift attack vessels placed in coastal coves. The savage math that keeps every escort commander up at night is this: to seal a strait, you need not sink a convoy. No insurance company on the planet will provide you with a policy unless you sink even a single tanker and destroy even a single smoldering hull in that corridor. The strait cannot be closed by brute force. Anxiety ends it, and anxiety requires just one illustration. That contradiction lies at the heart of this conflict. Although escort necessitates 100, the most formidable navy in human history managed to resolve 90% of the issue. The space between 90 and 100 is like a fire on a supertanker. For a problem that 2 supercarriers failed to resolve, why is the Pentagon dispatching a ship that the majority of analysts have written off? What are the advantages of having 2,500 Marines, over 50,000 sailors, support the people who run these machines by subscribing to Report on Conflict? Headlines are not for sale. The equations are solved. We need to know more about the ship the United States built, despised, and almost scrapped in order to comprehend the weapon they are delivering. Why? Because the backstory that led to its label as an error also shows why it could hold the key to solving the problem. The decision made by the Navy while designing the America-class Flight Zero was met with criticism from defense analysts, generals in the Marine Corps, and Congress. They crossed out the well deck totally on the design. The bottom chamber of an amphibious ship, which is flooded with ballast, is known as the well deck. Since World War II, every assault ship has had one on board. Launching LCAC hovercraft and landing craft are both accomplished in this way. An amphibious warship's identification is this. Imagine building a cargo truck without the bed when you design an amphibian without a well deck. The intensity of the reaction compelled the Navy to take action, restoring the well deck aboard USS Bougainville LHA-8. The third hull was a congressional mandate. Amphibious ships that forgot how to be amphibious, the America LHA-6 and Tripoli LHA-7, were written out as unsuccessful experiments. Indeed, the defense press was in agreement. That ship was a poor choice. However, the Navy had a different understanding than the criticism. Prior amphib designs were unable to handle the well deck's former location, which opened up a doubled hangar bay, expanded aircraft maintenance facilities, a surgical hospital with all the necessary equipment and jet fuel storage. The capacity to land Marines was not lost by Tripoli. The way Marines are brought ashore by Tripoli has been altered, shifting from the water surface to the air. In exchange, it was granted the capability to control 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth aircraft at once, which is a capability not shared by any other amphibious ship on Earth. In April 2022, off the coast of California, 16 fighter jets from Marine Aircraft Group 13 and 4 from VMX-1 were seen operating from her deck in a single surge evolution. The aircraft included 20 F-35Bs, which constituted nearly half of the air wing of a supercarrier that cost $3.5 billion. They were mistaken. The ship in question was actually the most perilous pocket carrier in the world. This is why Hormuz is totally correct in making that error. Carrier reluctance to enter the Persian Gulf was previously detailed in our video. The 540 nautical mile bathtub that Iran transformed into a kill box took 40 years. It is not worth the danger to store 100,000 tons of priceless steel there. Near Tripoli, 44,000 tons are displaced. Unlike Ford or Lincoln, she can be replaced. Losing Tripoli hurts the Pentagon's risk calculation. It is disastrous to lose a carrier. With its proximity and influence, Tripoli can be used as a stepping stone to other more permanent bases. Plus, she carries 2,500 Marines spread out over 5 ships, which no carrier has. The sole forward-deployed Marine Expeditionary Unit in the world, the 31st MEU hails from Okinawa. Just 2 weeks before Hormuz, they finished Exercise Iron Fist 26 with the Japanese Self-Defense Force, where they practiced fast amphibious assault, electronic warfare, and island seizure from February 23rd to March 9th. Chasing the Tripoli were the Egize cruiser Robert Small's CG-62, the Arleigh Burke destroyer Rafael Peralta DDG-115, and 2 Los Angeles-class LPDs San Diego and New Orleans, which were transporting Marines and their gear. A price must be paid. The sole amphibious fast reaction force in the Indo-Pacific would be lost if Japan were to withdraw Tripoli from the region. Making that choice was not easy. You can tell how crucial Hormuz is to the United States right now, because the Pentagon is pulling resources out of one theater to fix another. As they race into the world's narrowest strait, the ship they deemed an error is now racing across the South China Sea at tremendous speed. Additionally, it brings something new to Hormuz, the ground, rather than additional missiles. Iran fortified its beaches in order to thwart naval landing craft. There are no landing boats available to Tripoli. From above, its Marines descend. The precise role that CENTCOM will play in Tripoli is unknown. Any channel claiming differently is just guessing. The orders are classified. However, Tripoli brings 3 capabilities that were not present at Hormuz prior to her departure, and the capacity is not classified. Each of these addresses a different aspect of the 10% issue that the carriers neglected. The issue: too precious to risk operating in the Persian Gulf. Lincoln and Ford operate in the open ocean. Inside the strait, there will be no constant air cover. A combat aviation patrol takes more than an hour to fly from Lincoln, which is 500 nautical miles away, to the trade routes. Jets stay on station for a certain amount of time before they have to return for fuel. Drones from Iran may spot tankers in that space between takeoff and presence. Tripoli finds a physical solution to this. She is considered disposable enough to operate near Hormuz at 44,000 tons and $3.5 billion. No catapults are required for her F-35Bs because they are Stouffville short takeoff vertical landers. Their launch pad is 844 feet in the air. Reducing the operating distance from 500 to 100 nautical miles alters a single variable that impacts every aspect: Total time spent on the station. Find the result. F-35Bs can reach a cruising speed of about 450 knots after taking off from Lincoln at 500 nautical miles. Just traveling to and from the battle requires 2 hours of fuel, which adds up to more than an hour of travel time each way. That only allows approximately 40 minutes for real patrolling of the shipping routes on a typical shipment. Even with 3 missions each day per jet, there are still hours-long pauses. Do the same calculations now starting at 100 miles from Tripoli. 13 minutes one way, tripling the amount of time spent on the station. Instead of hours, the gap between patrols is reduced to minutes. Those minutes determine if an F-35B locates a tanker before an Iranian Mohajer-6 drone. Prior to transmitting targeting coordinates back to shore launchers, surveillance drones are detected by Tripoli's passive sensors. You can break the kill chain by killing the drone. As we discussed in the previous video, that chain is self-contained. The instrument that cuts it off at the source is Tripoli. Even while Tripoli fixes the sky, Iran still controls 2 of the 3 dimensions of the strait. No amount of air patrol can destroy a missile launcher embedded in reinforced concrete, and there are 3 fortified islands right inside the maritime lane. Having captured Abu Musa Greater Tomb and Lesser Tomb in 1971, Iran now controls all 3. Iran fortified them with coastal radar artillery positions, anti-ship missile batteries, and IRGC garrisons. These ships can launch weapons into shipping channels at point-blank range. They are aircraft carriers that cannot be sunk. Any capacity to survive on those islands still poses a hazard to every ship passing through the corridor, even after Epic Fury's air assault. In this case, since Tripoli was fine-tuned, the removal of the well deck really becomes beneficial. In order to reach the island, a traditional amphibious ship would have to guide landing craft through the very waters that are mined. Not in Tripoli. Not using landing craft the Marines insert, using vertical envelopment MV-22 Ospreys and CH-53 helicopters. Rather than navigating through the minefields, they take to the air. They stay far away from the water that Iran has been trying to deny for decades. A strike team's mission is to destroy radar and missile launchers, gather any intelligence they can find, and then return to the ship before the garrison can start a counterattack. Just a job where you don't have to shoot at tankers anymore. It's not a permanent position. There is a previous example, Holy Grail, 1988. In the Persian Gulf Marines from the USS Trenton, only needed 1 day to board and destroy Iranian oil rigs. For missions like this, the 31st MEU prepares through training. A word of warning, though a heavily fortified island, is no picnic to raid. After 2 weeks of bombardment, it is still unclear how the Iranian fortifications on these islands are holding up. Now we're considering the most unlikely yet potentially devastating situation. This, however, is important. Iran is compelled to station forces on those islands in anticipation of a raid, and for every IRGC member protecting an island, one is taken away from protecting the shore. Island solutions are raids. Apart from the islands, there is 6 nautical miles of open sea in the strait that no battleship can safely navigate. This raises a more substantial question. What is the best way to manage a passageway without bringing a ship into it? The most extensive reorganization of the Marines since World War II, the force-designed 2030 overhaul revolves around the notion of expeditionary advanced base operations. No one has ever tried to use it in battle. Perhaps the first is Hormuz. This is the process. In Oman and the UAE Marines can land on small islands, unpopulated coastlines, or allied territory. For F-35Bs and Ospreys to land, rearm, and relaunch without going back to the ship, They set up temporary bases, HIMARS launchers, radar arrays, and forward arming and refueling sites. The result is a no-go zone that covers the whole length of the strait. Mars may engage any swift assault boat, submarine, or mine-laying vessel that enters the Commerce Channel at 162 nautical miles with ATACMS, or at 270 nautical miles with PRSM. Firepower directed against ships from land. At the same time, the Marines ensure the safety of the LCS mine countermeasure ships that are currently active in the region. Overhead, F-35Bs form a protective bubble, and small boats screen against rapid boat harassment. Tripoli protects the sweepers before escorting them, which speeds up the time frame for mine removal, which still takes weeks. The physics of strait control are rewritten in that case. The presence of warships within the strait is no longer necessary for its control. On land, Marines can form a firepower bubble that is impenetrable, difficult to detect, and inexpensive. This case does not represent pure theory. During Epic Fury High, Mars fired from Bahrain and sank Iranian warships. At Exercise Iron Fist 26, the 31st MEU just ran through a situation very similar to this. Caveat number 1, EABO theory is brand new and hasn't been tested on such a large scale. In spite of proven physics, the logistics of supporting forward bases while facing Iranian counterfire are still up in the air. While in Bahrain, HIMARS communicated with Iranian vessels. This theory is novel. This is not a weapon. There are 3 distinct possibilities, but each one is irrelevant on its own. When put all of them together, it becomes clear that Iran is unprepared for this challenge. More firepower won't fix an issue that firepower hasn't solved before. Before Tripoli set sail, this theater lacked a certain element, and that element is about to be added. Iran spent the better part of 4 decades getting ready to face naval challenges, specifically the looming presence of American warships. That combination was perfected by Iran underwater mines, shore battery cruise missiles, and a swarm of rapid assault craft in the shallows. The purpose of every single dollar, every single ideology, and every single fortification was to ensure that ships could not afford to enter the Gulf. An aerial danger was introduced during the first 2 weeks of Epic Fury. Military installations industry and air defenses were all leveled by carrier air wings. Yet planes do missions and then head back to the base. They leave immediately. The arrival of Tripoli adds a ground danger to the equation. Any island shoreline or allied outpost along the strait can be garrisoned by Marines. Iran failed to fortify itself against that dimension. Iran fortified its coastline with mines, shore-based missiles, and rapid assault swarms to ward off ships that try to approach the strait. Iran reinforced its air defenses to withstand aerial bombing. These defenses are now severely compromised. Iran fortified its beaches in order to thwart naval landing craft. There are no landing boats available to Tripoli. From above, its Marines descend. Examine it now from Tehran's vantage point. Protect the islands from Marine attacks. EBO can approach from the coast. Fortify the shoreline and watch the islands crumble. There is insufficient supply at any one location to halt any action, therefore disperse to all corners. No success in any of the 3 attempts. There is no right solution to the equation because Iran fortified its defenses against ships and planes, not against Marines who descended upon uncontested positions by helicopter. With its factories in ruins and its air defenses deafening, Iran will be unable to construct a countermeasure in weeks, and that variable has never been part of the coastal defense equation. Explain clearly what this does not imply. Hormuz will not open tomorrow just because this. It still takes a while to clear mines. There is still a risk involved with escort. However, the focus and time frame are both changed by Tripoli from months to weeks. While the oil markets were bleeding, we waited for the equation to fix itself by crushing Iran under a naval bombardment before Tripoli. Following Tripoli, we approached the problem actively from various angles at once. Subscribe to Conflict Report if this video altered your perception of an amphibious assault ship. Preparation is underway for the following equation. Let us circle back to the paradox we began with, the 10% issue that remained unsolved after utilizing 2 supercarriers. The 90% solved by the carriers was an unprecedented feat in military history. Hormuz, however, does not use a curve for grading. Because 90% is not 100%, Hormuz operates on perfect confidence. All it takes to close the insurance markets and ship routes is 1 mine, 1 missile, or 1 burning tanker in the corridor. Adding additional ships to the corridor did not help the Navy finish the remaining 10%. They dispatched an elite unit with the mission of operating in inaccessible areas, such as on beaches and islands, as well as at altitudes beyond the strait that carriers are unable to reach. Since the Navy was unwilling to enter Hormuz, the Marines were dispatched to avoid invading or occupying Iran, to bridge the gap between 90 and 100% by resolving the equation using dimensions that Iran has never defended. For 40 years, Iran worked on a ship equation. They were rather good in fixing it. All of the defenses were set up with a single variable in mind: American steel on the waterline. This included mines, missiles, swarms, and mountain tunnels. The correct equation was solved, however, the variable was incorrect. While carriers lay siege from the outside, Marines work from the inside, and the ship that was initially deemed an error ended up being the solution that no one had anticipated.